more about, your impressions of MIT and with regard to race relations, and particularly, how you were talking earlier.
Okay. I guess what I was saying earlier was that MIT, I think it's the same as my high school or as my junior high, that, because we're all here, all the Mexican-American community at least is here, very, we're intelligent, we can work, we can get this place done, we can graduate. And I think that, they still look at us as like these exceptions. They're never going to realize that, no, this is just an entire community full of people who are just as smart as any other community. And unfortunately, they have a lot more cards stacked against them. So it's a lot harder for people to come out of the pipeline and make it. And I think that was really clearly shown when one time we held a meeting with Professor or Dean Benedict and Dean Redwine, because they were the first, they were new deans appointed, I think it was my sophomore year, and it was kind of like we were feeling that, well, we didn't have any say here, nobody listened to us, we didn't have a voice, we had no administrative help, that we were here just trying to make it alone, which I think is really hard since we're the first to even make it here in the first place, and to try and learn to navigate a system like MIT alone was going to be really hard. So when we had meetings with them, and they were just shocked, that, over like 80% of us are on this full financial aid. Like, we couldn't afford to pay for MIT. Even if all our parents gave every single dime they had, they were shocked to hear that a lot of us work hard to send money home to our families. They were shocked to hear that a lot of us, let's say, are the first to speak English in our families or came from bilingual education systems. Like, all these things you read about in the newspaper, well, that's us. That's where we came from. And they were just shocked. And I think that, I don't think MIT is a bad place. I think they just need to make a bigger effort on learning on what these communities are about. Because to them, it's just numbers. It's affirmative action. Well, let's let these people in and let's give them, let's diversify MIT. And they don't even really realize what diversifying MIT is. They say it's important for everybody to share these different experiences. They said that helps us grow as a community. But they never stop to ask, well, what are our experiences? What experiences is this community really bringing and sharing? And I think that that's where we're missing the note. I think that's where MIT is missing that last little bit of coming together, is that, yes, people come with different experiences. Yes, it helps us grow at MIT. It's important to have diversity. But we're not at that point where we're sharing those experiences and saying, oh, wow, this community comes from people who don't have so much money, or from people who just came to the United States or don't speak English, or, this African American community come from, the South, where they still experience these racial, tensions and, just these different types of experiences. Nobody shares them. So I really don't think we're growing as much, and then that's even building a divide because we're not sharing our experiences. You don't understand why these groups get here and don't succeed. So then you just look and say, okay, well, they must not be able to make it. And see, affirmative action's bad because it lets in the wrong people, or these people aren't capable of succeeding. And I think that they never give them a fighting chance because they don't listen to where they're coming from and what they need. Our needs are different than somebody who's, gone to private school and have known about college their whole entire life. Our needs are different than, somebody who's in the African American community or somebody who's in the Asian American community. Like, all our needs are different because our experiences are very different. And MIT needs to develop into a place that meets all those needs, not just the mainstream's needs. And they don't understand why this institution doesn't fit, let's say, the Mexican-American needs, and that's because it wasn't built for Mexican-Americans. Mexican-Americans didn't found it. They didn't establish the coursework. They didn't establish what the system was like. This institution wasn't built around them.
True.
And it seems like as if it's too old to where they're not ready to really expand it, to where make the modifications necessary to adapt to these different communities that are coming in. So I think that's where I think MIT is regarding race relations.
That brings up another question. You sort of touched on it, and I think we probably could get a little bit more in depth about this particular issue, and that is when you talk about the institution and having the different needs from different minority groups. What's your view on how or what we can do here at this institution to improve our race relations and racial climate at the institution from your viewpoint?
I think the most important thing that needs to be done is MIT can no longer just sit and accept students. They can't say, we are doing a lot for diversity, we are doing a lot for minorities in this country because we accept them into our institution. Like, that's no longer enough. Because like I said, they set us up for failure just by bringing us here to make, society happy, or to kind of make it seem like MIT's right on with all the minority community. They need to do more than just accept us. Things like having tenured faculty, making sure they have administrators, making sure that they put up artwork or display, an admiration, or I don't know what you would call them, but those things that are down the infinite corridor that talk about what alumni have done at the Institute, the research, the people who've left here. The only thing that's here that any minority student can relate to is Shirley Jackson. And that's like, and you can see all these students cling on to her. That's like their pride and joy is Shirley Jackson, because she's on that wall, and you walk by and you're like, okay, she's done it, so I can do it. She's walked down this infinite corridor every day, alone, trying to make it, so we can too. But if MIT really wants to be what they say they are, which is a diverse community who embraces differences and who wants everyone to succeed, they have to do more than that. They shouldn't want to make it just as hard as it was for Shirley Jackson. They should want to make it easier. They should want to make it fair and an equal education. And I think that the way they can do that is by changing the way MIT works a little bit,
How would you, if you had the power to
do that?
To do what you think would be important for minority students here, what would you actually do if you were in a position to make some changes? What things would you insist be done?
I think I would do a few things on just different types of levels. One, like I said, faculty. Because I think it's very important, because these are the people that MIT are putting out there saying, these are the best. These are the smartest, the brightest, most intelligent human beings on this planet, and they're our faculty. And I think if you sit and you say, these are the smartest, these are most intelligent, these are the brightest human beings on our planet, and they're all white, that's indirectly saying, we think, white people are the most intelligent, brilliant people on this planet. And I think that's the first thing that needs to get changed. I think also then you go on to other levels of who controls MIT. If you look at who controls MIT, you need to have administrators that are not just, white, but people of color. And on top of being people of color who embrace their culture also. Different types of people of color.
What do you mean by that?
I think I've seen minorities in administrative positions at MIT that kind of, on the outside, yes, they are a person of color, but they don't go to the, let's say they wouldn't go over to Chocolate City for a mixer, or they don't just get to know these students. They're also the same administrator who will walk down the hall and say hi to the white student, but turn their head, to the Mexican-American student walking by. I think that that's not fair. I think that, and I don't think it's their fault, but I think MIT, as an institution, places some restrictions on them. So it's kind of like, yeah, we'll bring you up here this high, we'll make you this position way up here, but if you don't go along with the flow, if you don't go the way we're going to go with our ideas, then we're not going to want you up here. So those people get stuck, choosing, okay, is it really important for me to right now fight for my culture, or is it important for me, let's say, to fight for my family, make this income, get this position up here? So they look at it as like, well, I'm doing a lot for my community just by being a face up there. I'm showing them that they can do it. And hopefully when they do it, they can maintain some sense of who they are while they're doing it, even if that's the price I have to pay, which is to not do that. So I think that allowing administrators on this campus to fully express who they are, where they come from, whether it be the clothes that they wear, the music that they listen to, or the students that they want to interact with on, very intimate levels, I think that should be allowed. I also think then, on a lower level I think they should put graduate students there, because graduate students are who all the undergraduates look up to. And if you, say, okay, well, we'll admit you to give you a BS from here, but no way will we give you a PhD, or no way will we give you a postdoc, which are like the cream of the crop degrees here. Again, it's like saying, these are the best of the best. These are the people that are rising as far as possible, and they're all white. So what is that saying? Well, now, society has changed, so we can let you get a BS, but we still don't have the confidence in you to think that you can actually get a PhD. And then I think on an even lower level than that, I think they should go down and look at and say, okay, we have all white faculty and all white administrators, but we have all black and Latino janitors. That's not very fair either, because they sure don't have a problem looking for them on those levels. And in fact, I can count them on my hands how many white janitors I've seen at MIT, or how many white cooks I've seen at MIT. And that's not fair to bring me here and to sit and say, you can do this, you can make it to be a professor, and your professors are all white, but all the janitors, are all Latino, or all the cooks that I go and eat at networks, they're all Latino, and that just kind of says, regardless, we'll let you few be the exceptions, but we're still going to keep you in your place where we want you. And I think that MIT, whether they're trying to or not, portrays that picture to its students. When I first got here, those were the only people I heard speaking Spanish. Those were the only people I saw, that I could relate to at all, and they were the cooks at MIT. That's not very fair. I could have got that at home, and that just indirectly throws a punch of, you're the few, but don't think we're going to let all of you guys get out here and eventually control these different areas.
Well, that's very helpful in terms of your view in this regard. I have another area that would be very useful, I think, for us to hear your view on it. And that is, what ways have you been impacted by the presence or the absence of faculty and faculty members, administrators who have, from your viewpoint, shown kind of receptivity to you, and sort of people who really sort of embrace cultural differences, and people who sort of, from your view, sort of really somehow or another convey to you that they nurture, people like yourself.
Mm-hmm. I think that there are a lot of people here like that. I think I was able to navigate MIT because I came into contact with really good mentors from the beginning. Those first few mentors were people of color. You yourself, helped me to really feel comfortable. I was grounded. I got here, I was grounded. I had somebody I could come to talk about my problems, my issues with the campus, and I had a safe haven. I had a place to go, a place I felt comfortable. And having that helped me branch out and take chances, because it was always kind of if they turn me away, or if they're not receptive to my needs, well, I still have, Dr. Williams, and I can still go back, and we're going to get through this place, and he's going to help me, whether anybody else does or not. And I think that was really important, because then I was able to try and meet some people in my major, which again, MIT in the end is about academics, it's about graduating, it's about doing well here, it's about succeeding, regardless of what's being thrown at you, regardless of what's unfair. And I remember I came in and I asked you, I said, well, I have these advisors, I have to pick an advisor now that's not a freshman advisor, but I have to pick an advisor in my major. And I didn't know anybody in my major, and the first thing I thought about immediately was there's one black professor in my major, her name's Professor Paula Hammond, and I immediately thought, well, I'm going to try and pick her as my advisor, because she was one of the choices. And I remember I asked you, and we talked a lot about the fact that I was probably going to meet her anyways, and I was probably going to be able to connect with her anyways if I wanted to. So why not take the chance of meeting somebody else? Because the more people I have behind me, the better off I can do. And so then I had asked, I'd asked you about other people that were in my department, and you had mentioned somebody named Professor Robert Cohen, who was in my major, who you had talked to a lot of graduate students, who had said, he was really helpful, really supportive, and maybe it wasn't just because they were minorities, but he was just a really helpful, supportive person. And a lot of students of color were really receptive to him. So I emailed him. I just emailed him on OM and said if he would possibly be my advisor, because I had heard, and I said very bluntly, that, I want to get out of here. I'm young, I'm Mexican-American, I'm the first to come to college, in all of my family, and I don't want to fail, and I need some help. And I was very honest with him. And he wrote me back very kindly, and he was like, well, I'm more in charge of graduate students, so I can't be your official advisor, but I understand what you want to do. I admire what you want to do, and I'm here for you. So I'd like to be maybe a co-advisor while you still have to pick an official one. And I said, okay. So then from the list, I kind of just asked around, and next thing I did was I emailed all the Latino student groups. And I said, anybody in chemical engineering, do you know any of these advisors? And if so, which one would be good? And one of them came back and said, well, this guy, Professor Smith, Ken Smith, is really nice. Why don't you meet with him, and why don't you have him be your advisor? So I did. So now I was going to have Professor Hammond if I needed her, because I would just be able to ask her. I had Professor Cohen, who was an older, white man who had been around MIT for a long, long time, who was definitely understood where I was coming from and was going to help me. And I had this new advisor that I didn't know. So I went and I I talked to them all, and they were all really nice to me. And Professor Cohen, who was the one that you had recommended, said, if you really want to do well in your major, you need to start doing some research. And I said, okay, well, all right, what do you think? What do you suggest? And he recommended me to a woman, because he says, now I know, it's very important to you that you get helped out because you have this situation. You're a little bit scared. You're the first. And he's like, I also think being a woman in this department is going to be very hard for you. So here's another woman professor that's great. She's at the top of her field. She's going places. I can just see it. He's like, and if you can get in with her, do research, it'll benefit you for a really long time. So I emailed her and said, do you have anything? I'd be willing to do it for free, volunteer, or credit. I would just like to do some research with you. And I didn't even know why I wanted to do this or why it was important, and I just did it. And then she said, yeah, and I met with her, and she obviously, she wasn't exactly like me neither, but she, as far as work goes, she was like, yes, I'll help you, and I know you don't know much, but I'll teach you. And I've worked with her now for 3 years. She's getting me into graduate school. She's now the executive officer of our department, so that Professor Cohen was right. She's just like going places, and she's just helped me get where I need to go. And I can say none of them really understood me, that I think I always leaned on you to say, this is going on in my family, this is, where I'm a little bit scared, I don't know if I'm coming back to MIT, I'm dealing with this, culturally, I'm not feeling comfortable on this campus. I always came to you for that, but finding people that were at least receptive, or understanding, or, wanting to help me, regardless of who I was, at least that, it really helped me. And I think that I haven't met anybody on this campus that's not a person of color that I go to who totally understands me. But at least they're meeting me in the middle saying, I want to, or even if I can't, I'll still help you kick butt here, and that's what my professors in chemical engineering have done. Said, I kind of mentioned to them what's going on at home, and Professor Cohen listens, and he kind of says, oh, wow, that's happening to you, or you're struggling financially, or this is going on in your life, and he listens, and he'll be an ear. But in the end, for them, they're kind of like, that's not where we come from, but if you can just get through this place, Desiree, and if you can do good, and if you can go to graduate school, you're going to be able to make it all better. And I think what helps Professor Cohen do that the most is he's not a person of color, but he came from a very poor family. And he struggled. He was the first to go to college. And so he connected with me, at least on my struggles in some way. And the most important thing was that they were willing to help me and see me do good academically. And they wouldn't let me fail. They kept asking, well, what happened? Like, my advisor was immediately, your grades are not acceptable. I had gotten, all B's one semester. And he's like, that's not acceptable. And because he wanted to push me to go far, because I came in asking the questions, and I came in saying I wanted to do so well, that when this place got tough, he wouldn't let me back down. And he's like, what happened to you wanting to do well? And I was like, okay, yeah, I'll do well. And it just made me want to work real hard, because they believed in me. Even though they didn't really understand me, they still believed in me. And I think that's as far as MIT is, that there's a lot of non-minorities or people that aren't of color that are in administrative or faculty positions that are key, because they'll at least still believe. They don't just see you as an exception or somebody who got in through affirmative action. They really believe you have what it takes to get where you need to go.
This is a very important piece that at least I'm trying to have a better understanding of, and you addressed it, but I'd like for you to say just a little bit more, and we're almost finished, about what you have learned over these 4 years approximately, at least it'll be 4 years in June, in terms of non-minority faculty members whom you have learned to trust and to have some faith in. And if you had to describe or give characteristics of people on the faculty who happen to be non-minority, whom you feel you would be able to identify as people who would be helpful like you just described, how would you describe these people?
I think that let's see, there's a few. I can count them on my hands. Professor Daniel Nocera, Professor Essigman, Professor Silby, in chemistry, he's the Dean of Science now. And then, like I said, Gleason, Cohen, Smith. There's a few, and I think what I would pinpoint a few of the characteristics that they have, some more than others, is that they come to this place and they interact in that whole sense of, for some reason, they don't try and interact with that whole good old boy network type attitude, like, well, we know it all, and we've been here, and we all graduated from MIT, we all came to MIT, and we're all the best. Like, they've all struggled in some way, shape, or form, or have interacted with people of other communities, so they knew how. They made it an effort. Professor Nocera made it an effort, to say hi to me. Like, I would walk in as a freshman, and I would come. Back then I was used to being back home, so I'd come with lots of makeup and these little short skirts and these tight little, because that's how we dressed back home, and he would still say hi, and he didn't look at me like I wasn't smart or anything. I would go to his office hours. Like, it was just that immediate feeling of hey, how's it going? I'm going to acknowledge you. I'm not going to pretend that you're not here, and I'm not going to let you just run through this place without getting to know you. And there's also somebody else like that his name is Professor Michael Moore, and he's in chemical engineering also. He's the same thing. He'll still say hi, and he's just a very down-to-earth person. He'll smoke his cigarette. He drinks his beer at lunch. All the students know this. And he's just very real. And I think that that's really important, because all these professors are. And I know that I'm fortunate, because I know that there's not a lot of people that have been able to connect with professors. I think one thing on the students' part is you got to try. The hard part about trying is when you get knocked off, or when people tell you no, or when people are rude to you, you stop trying. And I think that I would also say the most important, gosh, I'm trying to think of what I know about them. They all, every single one of them made an effort to say hi to me. Say hi to me. I think that that's the first thing, is that they say hi. They tend to be younger. I would say on average these professors are younger. Professor Nocera is younger. Professor Gleason is younger. I think Professor Cohen is a little bit younger. Maybe not, but you can just tell by the way he just walks around with a big smile on his face. Really happy to be here. Really happy to learn. And to be teaching. And I think that you can also pinpoint it, Professor Essigman also, that they're active outside. Like, you will see Professor Cohen at every MLK breakfast. I won the award, and he made sure I was up in the Chemi newspaper and everything. Like, he keeps tabs on those issues, whether he has to or not. That's the same thing with Professor Nocera, Professor Essigman, Professor Gleason. Like, they learn about these things. They make it an effort to go to the ship finger foods with the faculty, or CC has this reception too. And it's those people who make those efforts to go outside, and really say, okay, like, these students, I'm going to make sure they know that I'm here, Not that they should know I'm here, but I'm going to make sure that they know that I'm here for them. And I think that you can pinpoint the few professors that do that. And you can pinpoint them not by the way they act, but by how over and over again you hear the stories of the students whose lives they've touched, who they've made a difference in their education here. And usually those students tend to be the top students in every single major. The students of color, anyways, tend to be the top students who have connected with those few professors in every major, whether it be Professor Gray, or whether it be, I don't know any of the MIT professors, but there's all kinds of Latinos over there that do really, really well. And they have very intimate relationships with their advisors, their professors. They joke, they laugh. And the same thing with Chemi, which I think is a little bit harder. There's not as many in Chemi and in EE, but the ones that are there, if you get connected with them, you can just tell, because they've produced continuously outstanding, minority scholars.
Do you think that the Latino and other minority students sort of pass the word around in terms of people whom they have learned are very receptive to them and are people who are more genuinely, interested in helping them regardless of who they are.
Right. I think that they haven't necessarily in the past. That's why I think it's very important to document. Things like the book Technology and the Dream, where you can read, these people were mentors, these people, because I think it's really important. I think we're barely learning, lights turning on, like, oh, we should do this. Because I know, like in my major, I've told every student of color about, Professor Cohen, about Professor Gleason. Now I think like half the undergraduates that work with her in her research are minority students, because I'm like,
right.
You need to get on with her. I tell them exactly what my, the professor told me, and she helps them. And I tell them, just make sure before you leave, you let another student know, and you let another student know, because these professors are busy too in their work, and they have things they need to get done. And that's why I think that, some sort of documentation, or the Office of Minority Education, kept track of, what professors awarded, non-minority professors, for the work that they've done and for the impacts they've made in the minority community. I think that that'd be really important. I don't think enough of it's done. And in fact, like the strides that have been made in my major, at least, I'm really scared that that's going to go away too when I graduate. Like I said, the MIT department, I think, is pretty well grounded. They do. Now, for example, they do pass on the word. They know. I think a lot of that has to do with the MIT department is really involved with the minority community. They do the whole Professor Alex Slocum does the whole second summer. So he gets to know a lot of the minority students right away through the second summer program. And then because there's so many word of mouth, it's like, this major's great, these professors are nice, yes, it's hard work, but we're getting A's here, we're at the top here. For something they're doing right, that, half their honor students are Latino or African American.
Well, that's in our course too?
Yeah, Veronica's like my roommate who's Mexican American, and all her friends, they're all top 2% of the class. And they're all Latinos. And that's just like amazing, like to see that they're the smartest in that major. And so it's not that they can't do it, it's that that department's doing something right, I think, in the way that they're teaching their students. They also have a Latino professor or a couple Latino professors. I think that plays a role too. You can tell if they're going to accept you by how many professors they accept themselves that are of color, because there's a lot of good candidates, I think, out there. But pinpointing them, that's a hard question. I think documenting student stories and awarding them would be really, really important.
Rewarding who?
Rewarding the students, the professors who do make those efforts in our communities.
How would you think it would be worthwhile for the Institute to encourage more people like that to be more like these people you've described?
Encourage more people. I think ways that they can do that, it's going to be hard to encourage. I think a lot of our professors are old and they're kind of set in their ways. So the ones that have it in their ways, I think it's already there. But I think where the key goes is in the new professors that are coming in, like the younger ones, like Professor Daniel Nocera or Professor Essigman, Professor Gleason. They're younger, they're coming in. And if you look, a lot of these students went to schools like Berkeley. Berkeley is she went to Berkeley for her PhD, somewhere that's just so diverse in general. And I think that that's important, the communities that they grow up in. And I think that education, is a really big important part. So when they're hiring these professors, they have every right to say, are you able to teach all different types of students? But as far as rewarding them, how you go about doing it, I think if you reward them and give them really prestigious rewards, not like oh, congrats, or heard you're doing good, let me pat you on the back, but really honoring them. Of course every professor wants to be honored, right? So I'm thinking, if you see this one professor getting honored for something like that, and it's a big honor, well, then other people are going to want to get that big honor too. And even though it maybe start from selfish reasons, hopefully they'll get something out of the experience of wanting to help students of color so much that they may have went into it with, I want to get rewarded, or I want this honor, but they come out of it saying, oh, but I learned a lot, and in fact, I want to continue doing it. And things like Professor Essigman gets a lot of rewards. I think that people honor him all the time, just giving him the accolades, the verbal accolades that they give him. He is known for being an outstanding mentor and working to link together, communities of color. And I think that people respect him for that. And if they did more of those types of, giving more of those types of accolades to people who make those types of impacts on the community, I think you'll get more. Because it's kind of like everybody wants to be rewarded at MIT and everybody wants to be seen as the best.
Well, my final comment is to ask you, is there anything you'd like to summarize in regards to this whole issue about, non-minority faculty mentoring of students? Is there anything you would want to say before we close that you would like to share with not only, minority folks, but really people in general as to what's important in this arena for this kind of situation where you have a large percentage of the faculty who are non-minority, and again, you have a lot of students of color in the institution?
I think that the one thing I would say is I just hope that MIT doesn't blame the failures of the students completely on the students, because I think that they haven't done enough to find the right faculty to teach diverse communities. They've brought in a diverse community, but they haven't done enough to work with the faculty to teach them how to work with these students they're bringing in. And my biggest fear is just that these students, you see these students failing, and it gets blamed on the students. Never once do they go and look at the professors and sit and say, okay, let's change something. I think people really need to make a realization and stop denying that a lot of our professors went to segregated schools. A lot of our professors, at one given point in time, did not think that people of color were equal to them. And it's obvious, it's true. These people they're older, they're pretty old, and they've been here for a long, long time. They went to school when there were no people of color here at this school. They went to elementary schools where they probably said, those horrible nursery rhymes you hear about all the time about people of color, just these bad, bad things. And I think that to think that we could just erase that, or to think that we could just put it behind us and let them be professors of diverse institutions and assume that everything's going to work out okay, I think that that's unfair, and I think it's a wrong assumption to be made. I think, like I said, the MLK department is a great example of that. I think that they try. I think they have younger professors there. I think they're doing something right, because that just shows you the amount of success that they have coming out of that department just goes to show you that these students can do it, and it's not the students' fault half the time. Yes, there are every once in a while students who just don't want to try or who have given up, but I can't say that so many of us have done that. We weren't giving up before we got here, and in fact we got in here and we're here, and it's not fair that we have so much stacked up against us when we're here. And this place is so hard to just do it, even if, the odds weren't against you. That unless the faculty do something right, like what the MLK department's doing, which I still don't believe is perfect, but to have so many people be in their Pi Tau Sigma or their honor societies, it's just great. And I know it gives you a sense of, honor. And I think that more faculty should do that. Hold on. I think that it's very important to not blame it on the students, and to really proactively look into some changes that can be made with the mentality of the faculty, with the way the system's set up, with the way the academic system's set up. It's no longer going to be an all-white community that goes through here, so you can't design it around an all-white culture or an all-white mentality. You just can't. We need to change some things. The way you're taught, the way things are, it's just different. People learn differently. It's now diverse. We need to diversify our faculty. We need to diversify our teaching techniques even. The way you interact, whether it's you sit close or stand far, things like that are cultural. And I think you need to make those efforts to change the departments in order for us to succeed. And I'm really, really sad that they blame it on the students. I'm really, really sad that they say we don't have the drive, or we don't have the ability to succeed, or we don't have the desire to do well here, because we're here, we came, and I think that, for once, if they could just turn around and maybe point the finger at themselves and say, okay, no longer will we just throw this stuff in the past, we'll make some changes, let's start fresh, let's redesign the way this place is a little bit, but they'll see some really good, turnouts if they really want us to succeed.
Okay.
Now, if they don't, then they wouldn't make those changes. But if they do, then they'll reevaluate the way they teach students at MIT. Okay.
That can be identified of people who have these on the faculty who are non-minority, who have qualities that we're talking about, but they do things, practices like people who take upon themselves to be in charge of a program that promote minority students,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not minority people.
Right.
Okay. What kinds of things that you consider as best practices that you think would fall in that category, whether you see it here or not? You see what I'm saying?
Right. I think that the practices that I've noticed that I think are the most outstanding are the people that are just, like we were saying earlier, are just real. Like, I think about it now, and
real. What do you mean?
like
Talk
real
more
in the
about
sense like
how does one be real to you? I mean,
to me,
yeah.
I think they have kids. They let me know they have kids. They have a family. They let me know they have a family. They let me know that they've screwed up. They don't try and pretend that they were this. Yes, they are outstanding, but they kind of talk a lot about the mistakes that they've made. They're just not perfect people, or they don't try really hard to portray that they are perfect people. For example, anybody would ask you, Professor Slocum he's far from perfect, and I don't think he ever tries. He jokes about anything and everything with students, whether it be from, like I said, drinking to just being stupid and not studying and procrastinating, and as far as schoolwork goes. And he kind of just tries to interact with you on that level where you're at. He tries to say, okay, all the academics aside, this is me, this is who you are. We're different. We're a different skin color. We come from different cultures. But that's okay, because everybody's different from everybody. And so now let's bring back the academics into the mix of it, right? So let's take it out for a second. Let's get to know each other, and then let's put it back in. And I think that making statements, to make a statement like, I'm going to run, the second summer program. I'm not a minority, and I'm going to run this program, and I want to, because I see it as being important. That's a huge statement to make. I think Professor Daniel Nocera also, one time, he was writing my second summer thing, and then he was on the task force for minority education, and we were talking a lot about what I feel being Latina here at MIT, how it's hard, what I struggle with, and he sat me down, and he's like, this is why I work really hard to be he sits on the board for a lot of schools when they go to select their faculty. Mm-hmm. And he says that he finds it very, very important, and any opportunity he has to give a qualified person of color the job, he would love to do that, because he knows, regardless of whatever you're going to call it, a quota or whatever, it's very important. It's time that these students of color also have the opportunity to see somebody who looks like them up there. It's important. They deserve it. Both candidates may be very, very qualified. So now that we have qualifications met, I'm going to meet this unmet need, right? Which is allowing these students, who it's all about, academics are all about the students, to see somebody who looks like them up there. And he made that statement to me, and that's a huge statement to make, that you want, as a non-minority, as a non-person of color, to fill these faculty positions at other schools, with faculty of color when able to. And he says that he wants to do that because he knows it's important, and that's why he even sits on those boards. Mm-hmm. And to sit and say that is huge. Again, for Professor Cohen to sit and say, Desiree, yes, you are young, you are Mexican American, you are going to have it hard, you are the first, and yes, I'll help you with that. Me being able to say that to him, saying, yes, I'm Mexican American, I believe that affects me. I believe that this major's not going to be nice to me. I'm the first to come here, and, I don't think this place is going to be easy. In fact, I think it's going to be harder because I'm Latina. For him to say, yes, it is, and I'm going to help you, for somebody to admit that probably it is a big thing. And that just builds this connection. And I think that, like I said, there's gradients. Some I'm really close with and I feel totally comfortable with. Some just push me. And it may even be the fact that they haven't made a bold statement, like let's say I say Professor Slocum did, or Daniel Nocera did, or, Professor Cohen did. But they can just push me. They can just push me. And in fact, the one thing I see in them, and I would say this is a characteristic of them all, is that they were a lot like back home, in the sense that they weren't afraid to admit that they needed to push me twice as hard. Like, they needed to push me even harder than anybody else because it's going to be that much harder. And I look and I think back now when I was getting B's, like, my professors could have totally been like, B's, gosh, I'm surprised you're getting B's, good job. But the fact that they were like, no, where's your A's? Why are you not getting A's here? And I'm working on my thesis with Professor Gleason, and she's kind of like, okay, well, when's your research going to be done? And I want this to be a publishable quality. I don't want this to be a thesis. We're going to publish it for you. Because she knows there's this understanding that I do need to be not just good, but I need to be the best. Because there's very little room for error. Because it's so easy to want to say, as a student of color, well, see, she can't do it. Or see, she really didn't belong there. And I think that that's a quality that all of them did for me, is they pushed us that much harder. Professor Slocum has pushed me that much harder to get a patent, our whole group, to get a patent on our project. Daniel Nacera pushed me my freshman year. I was doing horribly in chemistry, and he was helping me and pushing me, saying, study more, study more, study more. All these people have really pushed. And there were times when I got, in fact, my advisor, I got a C in his class. And that was really hard for me to look at him. And I had gotten a C in his class, and he's just like, all right. So, I was going through some problems at home that he totally didn't understand, because they probably are very closely linked to my culture, what I come from. And he was just kind of like, okay, so you did it. I'm sorry you did. He pushed me up until there that I should have gotten an A. Then once I did it, he said, that's okay, though. But what about next semester? What are you going to do differently? You need to come back, and you need to do something differently. And to be hard on me, but to also not push me to the point where just say, I'm stupid, and he's just going to give up on me. That was very big. And I think that that's a characteristic that they all do, that they'll take the initiative, like our families do. They'll be bold enough to make that statement and say, you're a minority in this community, and you need to work twice as hard, because people are looking at you to fail or not succeed. And they admit that.
That's excellent. One final question.
Okay.
And if we have to stop for you to think about it, we can do that. But truly, what do you think the administration at MIT or any administration of a university need to do to promote, the value of mentoring by non-minority faculty members, formal or informal, but in terms of this particular need? What would you think that the administration could do to enhance that area, which is so key to success for any student, and certainly for our minority students?
I think that one thing they could do, like I said, is to reward them, the ones that are doing it. Reward them enormously. Because until they sit and say, hey, this is very important to us, people aren't going to care, because they're not making it a large enough priority. I think that Dean Randolph, who's in the Dean for undergraduate students in that office, he works really hard to meet the needs of us, whether it be bringing in alumni, whether it be just listening to us, hosting dinner for us. He does all those things, because I think he knows, or I don't know if, I can't say I think he knows, but that he does as much as he can. I think I look at him and I watch him do as much as he can in the position he's in, because he doesn't have any control over who the faculty hire. He has no control over what they're doing. I mean, that's the first thing that was told to me when I was like, why are there not more Latino faculty members? Is, well, administration doesn't have control over it. So I think that's one thing they need to do, is take a little bit control back. They're supposed to be the mediators. They're supposed to be the people that are running this place and making sure that it's running efficiently. And I think that they're not necessarily doing it because they're letting these faculty, each department do what they want to do. And I think that, like I said, a lot of those faculty members are people who went to segregated schools, are people who are from an older generation, which is okay. But maybe what they can do is, the administration can say, okay, well, we can't tell you who to hire, but we can implement diversity training. We can implement, that you guys have to take these classes, or you guys have to do these certain things. Let's say, have a dinner with the minority students in your major once a year. You need to do that. We want that to happen. Like, make sure that whatever professors are hired must connect with them and require it. Say, no, you guys have to do that. And I know that they say that they can't really say that they have to do anything, but I mean, that's important. Yeah. If these professors were looking and saying, you know what, we want to have a dinner to get to know you guys, to hear what specific issues are revolving around you in this department. I mean, that would say a lot. I think a lot would get said.
That's a good point.
I think that, making them connect with us, making sure that they reach out to us, whether it be in Europs or anything like that, like, I think that could be really beneficial. Like I said, you can tell if these faculty members really want to by the fact that they don't even want to hire, minorities. If they don't want any amongst them, why do they want to teach any of them? Like, that's a big key statement. When I found out they hire their faculty, I'm like, okay, that's very key, because look around. Who are their faculty? They have no faculty of color. So really, in their small little network, they don't want any of them. So they're just teaching us because they have to. And until it stops becoming them teaching us because they have to, but more teaching us because they really, really want to, like, there's going to be this divide. And I think that the administration can play with that a little bit. Maybe give money to the department and say, okay, we're giving you money for these people, for these students. We're giving you money to have dinners with them. Or we're giving money allotted for Europs for them. Like, there's fellowships and other, like, now that I'm applying to graduate school, I see that there's fellowships for minority graduate students who come into the university. Well, maybe it can be a fellowship type thing, saying each professor has a fellowship that they can grant to a minority student or a student of color to do research with them, And I think that could be really, really beneficial. Just doing things like that spark connections between faculty and the students of color. And when they see us start to work, I mean, there's no doubt that these students are really brilliant. There's no doubt once you make that connection with them. And I think that they should also, implement something to where they make sure that the faculty be accountable for who's not doing well. For once, make them accountable and say, give me reasons why this many students of color in your department did not do well or did not graduate. Tell us why. Give us reasons. And make them research it. Don't make some task force find out, but make them in their individual departments, because departments are so different. It's not universal. It's different from department to department. Why? Make them find out what's wrong. Make them analyze what the loopholes are and say, and if you guys continue to do this, well, then you're not doing your job, because you need to make sure these students graduate. And there's something wrong here, that there's such a huge discrepancy. And no, we don't want to hear that they're just not smart enough.
I want to ask you a question. The question I want to ask you is, when you look at the fact that all of your senior academic officers have most likely, particularly at MIT, have come up the ranks of the institution as a part of a culture that they have had to become a part of in order to be where they are.
Right.
And if that culture has not embraced diversity, and that there's a need to make a change, how are you going to make a difference and be able to change the environment in a way that minorities or diversity is a major part of the future of a university like MIT?
Okay. I think there's two things that have to be done. As students of color, as mentors of color like yourself, it's very important to lift the rug and let all the students of color see really what they're up against. Like, honestly what they're up against, because that gives them the strength to fight and say, okay, well, we need to change this, and not only do we need to change this, but we need to remember this, because there's going to come a time, especially for students at MIT, where we're faced with that decision. Will we go to grad school, or will we just take the job that they're hoping we take? Well, then you got to go to grad school. From there, will we go to a good grad school, or will we go to the one we want to? Well, let's go to the best. It's all these sacrifices, because in the end, we have to be put in these positions where we can come back and say, okay, I'm everything you said you wanted. right? So now I know everything that these faculty say that they want from these, well, we don't have faculty of color because they don't have this, this, and this there, or they don't know how to do this. And then you come back and you say, okay, well, I'm everything you wanted. Here, it's right here. And then when they choose to either accept it, hopefully they will, because sometimes it's just so flat in their face that there's no way they can't, right? Then the most important thing is to not forget where you came from. I think that's the problem administrators of color and faculty of color have today, is that they forget all the struggle that it took to get where we get, and they just all of a sudden think a light's got switched, or they've gotten brainwashed to think that it was given to them easily, that they want us here, and that they gave it to us. So let's say, for example, we're doing this Latino lounge, and we get it. And then 10 years from now, I come back and I see these students loving it and so happy, and in fact, not even getting mad that another organization was put in there with us. And it's like, they're not going to know, because they're not going to remember that we fought to have it. And I may even see the administration telling them, oh yeah, we gave this to you. You asked for it and we gave it to you. And it's remembering the struggle, remembering how hard it is, remembering how hard they made it for us to get here. That's what I don't think our administrators of color who in our higher positions right now remember, because I cannot honestly think that it was that easy for them to get there. Somehow they forgot how mean these people were to them when they were getting there, but now that they're there, they forgot all the bad things that were done to them, all the injustices, and they just think that they're all friends and everything's all cool. And I say that because that's a problem now of the non-minority administrators too, that some of them will build their careers helping minority students and wanting to work with them and wanting to work hard and be mentors to them. And then they get promoted because they did all this or because they were the right on person. And then when they get there, it's kind of like they're faced with these decisions. Okay, well, now I'm up at the top. Now I'm president best, and I'm at the top of MIT. I have so many people to make happy. Who am I going to choose to make happy? And it's so funny because you go to these MLK breakfasts, and every year you hear the exact same things out of his mouth. That he's humbled when he's there. He's humbled by the speeches. He's humbled to hear the issues that we're presenting. But the fact of the matter is, for the rest of 364 days of the year, he's choosing to build alliances with the people who he sees in power right now. You know what I'm saying? And he's faced with these decisions of who am I going to make more important right now? The faculty that are making money, the faculty that are building MIT's name, the faculty who are white at MIT and who are in power. The one thing is I'm hoping that eventually they're going to have another thing coming, because there's so many of us getting educated that we're going to remember this and we're not going to forget. And we're going to go and say, okay, do what you want now, but in the end, we're going to take over this position. We're going to be the ones that are in power. And then what? Hopefully we won't forget the struggle and we won't think everything's hunky-dory, and we're going to make the changes happen that we need to happen. And I think about it now too, because that's something that we were talking about, the administrators. How are we going to make these changes? Bringing faculty from diverse experiences, whether it be that they're women, whether it be that they're of color, whether it be that they just have diverse experiences that they share. That should be very important. I know that when I write my college essays, I write about my experience, and that is important, to write about my experience in life and the fact that it was different. That's one of the things that helps me get in, because if it wasn't that I made it through these struggles, then I wasn't going to get in, because, why did I not have the best grades, or then why did I not go to the best private school? And I think that should be a criteria for all faculty that are hired. I think that they should have to have some diverse experiences. They should be more than just smart. They should be able to teach, they should be able to connect, they should be people, and I think that they should be able to learn the value of diversity and know it and have experienced it. And I look and I say that because my faculty advisor, the person I work with a lot, Professor Karen Gleason, she's not so much with minority students as much as she's very involved with women in engineering, which is really bad too. Women in engineering, the numbers are low, there's not very many people, and she had the guts as a faculty member to not forget where she come from, to remember how hard it was as a woman to get through here, that now that she's back, she was fighting, and she's like, well, we don't have any, my women faculty, and we don't have any women faculty in high positions at this institute. And she fought, and she fought, and she remembered the fight. She never pretended that everybody was on her side. She didn't forget, in fact, that a lot of them were probably against her. And then she's here, and she fights, and now, because she fought so hard, she's the executive officer of our department. And I think it's that way that, I don't think they gave it to her. And she even told me, flat out, they gave it to me because we fought so hard. I personally didn't even want this position, she said. But we fought and fought and fought that they decided it was time to give it to somebody, and they gave it to me, which is being the executive officer of our department. And I think that that's very important. And I think remembering where you came from, even the non-minority faculty, to remember what it was like being a student. Remember, the injustices that you felt. And if you're going to talk about things, then mean them. If President Vest is going to talk about being humbled, well, then be so humbled that you decide, okay, for 1 year, I'm going to dedicate to making this community better for minority students. That's what that's going to be my top priority. Because it's easy to say that to a room full of minorities. It's easy to say that that's your top priority. Because they're really not the ones that you address at your board meetings. They're really not the ones that see you make all the decisions. They're really not the ones that see you allot all the money for your budget. And I think that, forgetting where you come from, and in fact, maybe that's it. They're not forgetting where they come from. They're remembering exactly where they're coming from. They're remembering who's putting the butter on their bread, or how do you say it? The ones that are giving them their career are these white faculty members, so they want to keep them happy. But I think that, that's sad, and that's recurring the cycle that's this establishment that's been there for years and years and years, is because they're keeping the power concentrated in one spot. They're doing that, and they won't stop. They've been doing it. They'll continue to do it. The new faculty are still all white. They're still all white males, and the presidents are still all white males. And, even the minority administrators, I think, the ones that won't really connect with their community and fight the causes that need to be fought, are fooling themselves, because they're never going to be a president of an institution here. They're never going to move any higher to where they're actually in the full-fledged limelight, given really, big decision-making, opportunities. And until we unite and say we demand this, changes aren't going to come, and I've learned that. And MIT doesn't give us nothing unless we demand it. Not ask for it, but demand it. And I think it's because, in all reality, they don't really want to give it to us. Right now, they're doing it because they have to. And it's when they change their mentality and start wanting to that MIT is going to be a better place. And they're not going to do that until they see it's going to be 10 years, 20 years. Well, we're going to do it with or without them, and we're going to be demanding that changes be made. I think we're slowly starting to do that, at all levels, on the state school level especially, because that's where there's a little bit more power. There's more minority faculty, more minority administrators. Yeah. And so, that's it. That's it.
That was a lot.
Yeah, so I'm done.
Very good.